So I just haven't heard back from him. I don't see an email from him about the access to get into that. But we're looking at the different things that we have to trying to wade our way through the videos and some of the things there. So if you can just kind of start at the beginning and think of us as basically brand new. Some will be familiar to us, but nothing wrong with starting us at the basic, very basic beginning here, please.
Sure, sure. Yeah, and so things have, changed in terms of the tools. I mean, it's the same underlying concept. So the tools are what you're going to want to see and get started using. And you can see on my screen there on the right, that's Glenn's phone number and the email, but you probably already have that he can be the central point for ongoing support and questions and stuff. But I'm glad to help as well. And like I said, those documents that I sent, I had put together as we kind of went through getting ramped up here in the San Jose area, and like you. Go ahead.
No, I said okay. Hey, that's great. And we do get that email, and we have them open here. So
yeah. Yep. And so like you, I had done a little bit. There was a guy named Ron Simmons out here that was real active and had done a lot of work under that kind of original scheme of walking the streets with the PDAs and actually starting to score the properties live. And our photography, it kind of depended on the zone. Some of them were 100% done. Mine were probably about 60%. And as you probably know, at least the model we're going into now, the lack of photographs isn't going to be a showstopper. Some of them we're doing, kind of the AVM competitor that's just going to be a single or a couple pages and won't have a photograph. Others we may, the lenders are going to ask for a more current photo anyway, and so we may bolt on a fee for us to actually do a drive-by and get the current photo. So I don't think that's a showstopper. What had been probably for a lot of people was just the lack of the data being updated in Volytics, and obviously we're getting through that now. The other thing I was going to ask, and I was starting to ask Justin, do you know, did the rest of the zones get sold? Is there anybody else there, in Utah that...
last I looked here earlier, no, I'm the only zone owner still. Everything else is still available.
Yeah, okay. And, again, Harvey probably said it, but down the road there's these Project 100s or Project 200s where, if it looks like it's going to work for you, you could potentially pick up the unknown zones. And we did that here between about 4 of us in Santa Clara County in San Jose to get the coverage, at least for the areas we could. And, there's some that are mountainous and rural, and certainly, a lot of Utah is that way too, where there just may not be the homogeneity and the critical mass that you probably already recognize. But I was asking about that a little bit just to, encourage if there was anybody else there that were zone owners, collaborating together really helps. So if somebody gets stuck on something, you can ask another person, but at least with the two of you guys and it being family, that's probably easy enough to go back and forth. So let me start with kind of the beginning, and so we'll do that. We'll go over to the website here, and so this is what Volytics looks like now when you log in. And you said you just requested your login, right? So you don't have that yet?
That's correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I'm logging in on one that it says UAT up here, which is kind of a test environment, just so we can play around if I mess something up. But it's the same login, and it's going to look the same. So now when you log in, the first thing you're going to see is this map page, and so it'll have your zones colored in, and you can see here my area. This little money bag thing, if you haven't seen it, as we get real orders or we can enter our own kind of test orders, they'll show up this way, and so we can click on it and view the order and process it. When you were first starting scoring, did you go in and look at any of the zones and decide, where to draw the boundaries to make the market groups, that kind of thing? We
had started doing that. There's still a little bit of confusion that we had as we were going through that. exactly the difference between the two. There's about 3 different ones. There's market groups, and we were trying to determine whether they were talking about things like, what are they called? Census tract numbers, and doing them by that, or whether we were going to do them by similar types of homes. A lot of that we had broken down by subdivisions that were very similar. And we were trying to figure out whether it was better to do it that way, or if it was better to just do it as a local area, I don't school district, whatever you want to use.
Right.
We were trying to, at that point, we were still trying to decide which was the best way to do it. And one of the reasons why we wanted to start where we did, we kind of started in the middle, is we figured, hey, we might, if we have 2 different zone owners next door to each other, one might be scoring theirs one way, the other person would be scoring a different way. We might have identical homes on opposite sides of the street where the zone breaks, and we wouldn't even be able to compare them to that. So that's why we kind of thought we wanted to get all the zones and be able to, even if we farmed them out from that to other appraisers that were interested, we would be able to make sure everybody was talking the same language. And we never really got into what language that was going to be. Things kind of went sideways before we really had sorted it all out.
Yeah. Okay, and I asked that because that's a kind of the first step going in is deciding how or if you're going to slice up your zone into markets. So, there's the concept of the zone, which is probably the zip code. That's this black line you see here. And then there's markets, and here I'd kind of messed around with this one, but you can see, I think, that there's like 2 of them here. There's one over here that's kind of a dog leg on the left, and one here, and then this one over to the right that's in the lighter color is the mountainous area. So what I would say, and I think is important, is don't cut the zone up any finer than you really need to. And maybe if it's a very homogeneous zone, you won't cut it up into any kind of geographic markets, or maybe you'll slice it just in 2. The reason for that is because Validix, after you've sliced it into these markets, is going to go ahead and slice it up some more based on the property size, whether it's a single family or condo. And so you would see probably 20 to 30 market groups created by Validix, even if you didn't do any kind of markets yourself. And so what you're going to want to get to is maybe 15 to 25 market groups that each month you'll go through and check and update the comps on. So just to make it manageable, you don't want to have too many market groups created. And, some people, myself included when I was first looking at this, said, I can go in by census tracts and these nice little pockets. And it's true that there can be some differentiation that you can do, but it just becomes a lot tougher to manage and to get enough properties so that you'll have sufficient sales and not have so many that it becomes unmanageable. So if I just kind of let me flip back over here to my PDF file, and the one I sent you called Scoring a Zone, and blow this up a little bit here. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do.
There's a zoom down
blowing
the
that up.
Yeah,
You're
so
blowing that up quick. Would it be better to start? You said even leaving it as no markets within the zone other than what Validix creates. Better to start that way and then start drilling down instead of drilling down too far and having to come back up afterwards.
I would say, well, let's see. It's a little bit tricky to do that, to slice it into market groups after you've scored it. It's not impossible, but the the thing is, there's kind of this idea of primary and secondary market groups, so you combine things together. So if you go in and create, do some dividing afterwards, then you'll go through and have to recombine them. So if you're fairly confident that it's a homogeneous zone, there's no big school district differences or other things in there that really do. The idea is, as an appraiser, would you cross the boundary to find comps? They may not be ideal, but could you make reasonable adjustments, based on size or age, that kind of thing, to be able to use.
So it sounds like
comps.
You've
Go ahead.
made the comment there that I think I've been looking for since we'll just say day one with Zayo, as we were talking about going into markets. Is that when we're talking about a market, everybody says, oh, well, we do this because we like the condos in this and the golf course community in that one. It's based upon more of a location adjustment that you would normally make. If these homes, luckily we've got very homogeneous. These are bedroom communities for the Salt Lake metropolitan area.
Right.
That's why we picked them, because it's 95% residential homes. There's some that were built, the first subdivision got about 3,000 homes that were built right after World War II. It's the GIs coming home. They're cement block homes, all the way up to homes that are, the McMansions and stuff.
Yep.
But for the most part, these are all residential areas, and we could never, when everybody was talking about census tract numbers of school districts, one school district to another doesn't make much difference out in our market, so we wouldn't value it different based upon something like that. So it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me when they were talking that way. But now it sounds like you're saying if you see that idea, if it's a golf course community, you probably wouldn't take something else and compare it to that, or that for a different market that's not on a golf course. That would be your market breakout that you're talking about. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. That would be the kind of thing, like
Okay.
a golf course community. Out here, we've got some condo developments, and so those become ones where, depending on the area, you may have to create a separate market group for each condo complex, or maybe a high, medium, low, depending on the amenities they have, whether they've got the health club and the swimming pool, or if it's just the real basic older ones. But for the single family homes, you don't want to slice it more than you have to.
Yeah, because analytics doesn't score on basically on location. That's why we're doing this.
Yeah, exactly.
Into the different markets because of that. Okay.
Yep.
Gosh, the lights come on here. It's so kind of nice, kind of bright over here right now. So
good,
that's good. Thanks, Matt.
Yep. And so, like I'm saying, Analytics is going to cut it by these size ranges that it's got pre-programmed in, and sometimes that helps too. I mean, like out here, we couldn't get one story versus two story. It didn't matter too much, but really, until you get above 1,600, they're all going to be single stories out here. And kind of the same way, some higher end areas, all the homes are over 2,000 square feet anyway, so they end up kind of segregating themselves into a separate market group. And then, within those market groups, like I'm saying, you still got the things you can do, like condition or location, so you can go in if there's a busy street where you'd knock down the values, you can hit the location scoring for those and do it that way. You don't have to do this geographical division. And so,
Okay.
Yep, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just saying, yeah, okay, I understand. That makes sense. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm just going to mute this and listen. Instead of every time I comment, say, yeah, I understand that, you stop and ask me what I want. So I apologize. Go ahead.
No problem. So hopping back over here, so you'll have your different zones, and like this one, I hadn't cut up into market groups, but if you want to, then there's the map tool, and I've got a separate little document on that. I don't think I'll spend much time on it tonight, but you can use that and draw on the map, trace down the street or whatever that you want to use as the dividing line, and capture that. So you can do some divisions into the market groups using this GIS tool here that allows you to draw around it. Or if it's like condos or something, you could go in and sort those out separately, perhaps by census tract, and give them a name that way too. So if you decide you're going to do it geographically, you can use that tool here and cut it up that way. So assuming that you kind of make that decision and then decide to create some market names with the GIS tool, you could do it on this screen, the map. The other tool that I don't know if you've heard this term, the REDE tool or the CAS tool, the thing where you download all the data, and you may have seen that there was an Excel spreadsheet way to do this that they were talking about a couple years ago. Did you go that far or get into downloading the XML data for your zones?
Some of it, we actually had the county information and everything that had come down, but that was right where we'd gotten to. We've seen the REDE tool, have not worked with it at all. Got the video here, and we're trying to work our way through it. And so we know where it's kind of going, and it sounds a whole lot easier than what we were working at before, but that's about all we do know of it.
Yeah, okay. So we'll look at that. We'll look at the REDE tool tonight and kind of show you how that would work. Just, while we're here on the web page still to give you an overview, so you're going to start in this map tab up here, and, I'll say this, Volytics is still different than most websites in terms of how it's got this menu stuff set up, but typically it's going to be up here with one or two rows of menus on the top of the screen. So the next one over is orders, and this is the one where you can see orders. Once we're in production, they'll appear on this screen and you can click on them and fulfill them. Or once you've got your zone scored, if you want to do some testing, which is kind of where we're at out here now. So we'll take a recent sale in the MLS and then just create one of these Z products to see the predicted value. You can use this place an order button that's over here on this screen. So that's the orders tab. The next one over the market tab, this one hasn't changed much, and so this is where you can start from each month when you're getting ready to balance your zones. You go to the markets and use these default settings or change it to the zone you're getting ready to work on, and then click search. And then it'll show you a screen that looks like this. And so this is a zone that was homogeneous. I didn't further divide it, and I probably had maybe 40 markets initially that I've gotten down to 12. And so each month this is what you're going to start from. You'll look at each of these market groups. So I just in the REDE tool you'll see this. I just created one market name here for the whole zone, California 606 Maine. And then as you can see, Volytics is doing its stuff, slicing it by size range, by style, and in this third column by type. And again, all these details are in the document you can go back to look at, but just to give you the overview here. I use this one that the C stands for commercial and special purpose. That was kind of my catch-all for everything that wasn't a residential one that I could score, and so it's just one line here. As you go over to this column that says comparable status, there's no date there, meaning I haven't messed with it. But but these other ones that are say live or modified live zones, this date here in the test system, this was the last time that I went through and looked at the comps and scored it, so January 19th. It'll say a C for comparable selected, I think, if this has been done within 30 days. And so that's how you can kind of keep track of where you're at with the zone. The other thing, again, just in terms of giving you the overview here, these numbers, the market properties and total properties, where they differ here, like 706 versus 860, that means I've got some other market groups combined in this primary-secondary relationship. So I wanted to get enough properties in a market group to have what I'll call critical mass. And by that, I mean probably 200 or more properties. If you don't have 200 or more properties in a market group, you're not going to have enough sales per year to be able to get your, say, 3 comps within 6 months. And so that was kind of the benchmark that you'll want to look at in terms of setting these up after you've scored the properties and putting them together in market groups. And so that's these two numbers here. 706 over 706, that means all of them were able to be scored. If there were some, for some reason, that I excluded and said, you know, it's on too big a lot or there's something not right with it, then that number would be a little bit less. And so on the next line you can see that 665 are modified live out of 688. So there's probably a few oddballs in there that I couldn't group together or score. So that's you know, just sticking with the overview here. That's this tab, and this is the one you'll be going to most frequently. You'll come back to the markets each month. Properties here, it gives they disabled a lot of the search capability. This address lookup, if you want to go in and you know, make some changes to an individual property, you can type it in here and search and get its page to make changes to the scoring. With the REDE tool or the CAST tool, you'll also be able to do this. You'll pull down all the properties in the zone. You can you know, drill down to individual properties or score them by characteristics. So don't use this a lot, but once in a while, if there's a particular property, we can search on it here. Import export, that's what we're going to start on next here in terms of using the CAST tool and pulling down everything, all the properties for a zone. And then this MLS import, this was the thing I mentioned earlier that I'm working on a little tool. They've increased the capability but increased the complexity here on the MLS import. It used to be we just pulled in about 6 or 8 fields and just all the closed sales, but now you know, with the 1004 MC form, where you got to do the market conditions and the trends and stuff, they're working on programming that into Volytics so the reports that require that, they can be generated. And so we're pulling in, or at least developing the capability to pull in, you know, active listings, pending sales, that kind of stuff, all the different dates and concession amount, that kind of thing, so that this can be generated. So this MLS import is kind of a separate task all its own. You'll want to do it, but I'm gonna set that aside as well and say that that's something, you know, kind of after you get things set up and what they call rough scored in your zone, you can tackle, and we can come back and visit it. So let's go back to this import export tab, because that's where you'll start. So the idea is that you'll pull down, you know, all the properties in your zone, and you'll do some scoring, batch scoring quickly. You know, say that there's 10,000 properties in a zone. You'll pull those down, you know, be able to make changes across all of them, and then import it back up into Volytics. So the way it works is you'll start with a zone here, the drop down, it'll be set up for you, and then you'll do an export. So this is exporting it out of Volytics into your desktop. So when I click this button, it's going to export.
How often do they update that Volytics, the data that we're going to download it? Was this done 3 years ago, 4 years ago, or has it been updated since? Are they getting this from the county?
Sure. So there was an initial batch of data that populated our zones and had all the property characteristics, right? The lot size, the improvement size. It comes from FAIRS, First American Real Estate Services, which gets it from the county. And so everything you'll see in here would be the same thing you'd see if you went to RealQuest or NDC data or whoever you get your public records data from. And as far as how frequently it's updated, if you've seen some of the emails or you hear Harvey talk, there's two numbers that are thrown around, 2580 and 1080. And I guess those are the product numbers with FAIRS. So 2580 is the entire set of property data. So the 2580 data hadn't been updated for 3 or 4 years and is now being actively updated across the U.S. I don't know if it's been run for Utah, but what that should pick up is any new properties that were built within the last 3 or 4 years, or if there were additions and stuff that increase the square footage. That's in the 2580 data. As far as how frequently it's going to be updated after this push to update across the U.S., I don't know for sure. They're talking about the process being very quick now, where it used to be very, very slow, and so it wouldn't surprise me if that number is something like once a quarter or maybe once a month. But the other piece of data or data set is called the 1080 data, and that has the tax information, the property tax, the assessed information, and it has any recorded sales. And so that 1080 is supposed to be running at least once a month. And it had been in some areas, and then they'd shut it off where they were working on the 2580. And so there were areas where the assessed values or the property taxes were 2 or 3 years old. But again, there's programmers up in Canada that are working on this and have it working faster now. And so again, I don't know for Utah, but it's supposed to be running monthly. And I don't think when we download the data that we'll see, the XML data, I don't think we see the assessed value and stuff in there. So to check it, you'd have to go back into Valytics here and like search on a property and check if the tax information has been updated. So does that help you in terms of answering the question you had about frequency?
It does. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to getting in and being able to look at it ourselves. So.
Yeah. And of course, then the other piece of recent data we need is in this MLS import. And once you've got that working, then you could literally have data as fresh as yesterday. So you could be seeing sales from yesterday if they were reported in your MLS. And at least for us, that's critical because with the MLS sale, you'll also have a link to the actual MLS listing, so you can go back and look at the description of the condition and the extras and the kind of things that you wouldn't get in what we're doing now, this kind of modified live where it's all desktop work. And so you'll certainly want to get that working, get the MLS import working for your zone. So as you go through and do kind of the gold scoring, the gold standard, where you really do know, is this condition rating, should it be a 5 or a 6 or a 7 on my scale, you'll definitely want to have the MLS working for your zones.
Makes sense. Okay, thanks.
Yep. So the other thing I should say while we're on the web page, the Valytics tools here, like import, export, and the mapping, were designed to work on Google Chrome, and so if you aren't using Chrome, you'll want to get that on your system and use Google Chrome. Some of this stuff will still work in Internet Explorer, but there's some things, particularly like the mapping, that can be a little flaky or just flat out not work with Internet Explorer. So is that okay for you guys? Are you using Chrome, or are you comfortable with using a new browser if you aren't right now?
What about Firefox?
I'm sorry.
How does it work with Firefox?
You know, there's another guy here in Santa Clara County that really likes Firefox, and he's been using it and has not had problems. And Firefox uses the same base code, I think, or maybe it's the other way around, actually. Chrome may have used the same base code as Firefox, and so there hasn't been problems that he's seen. So I'd say, you know, just with the caveat that something might pop up, you know, if you like Firefox, it's probably going to work okay. Internet Explorer is the only one.
If something doesn't work, then to switch to Chrome.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. That's
yep.
good to know.
Okay. And, you know, I use all three, but I don't use Firefox a lot. I think the interface looks pretty similar. When I push this export button down here at the bottom, you can see it gives me a little bar here and says, okay, my file for California Zone 606 is downloaded, and then I can do this, you know, show in folder and work with it. One of the documents I put together called Getting Started just says that you need to be pretty familiar with how to move files around and create new folders on your computer, maybe to zip and unzip stuff. How do you guys feel about that? I mean, are you okay with?
Yeah, we're both good to go with that.
Okay, all right. Yeah, and you know, you never know, because some people, as I found out, you know, they can use the appraisal software, but you know, that's been pretty much all they've used the computer for. So if you're okay with that, you know, you're going to get it as a zip file, and Windows 7 will give you the capability just to right-click and open it. I've got WinZip on my machine, and so then you'll save it to a folder that you want to work with. I'm not going to save it because this one I've actually gone through and scored, but I've got a version of the XML file that we'll work with tonight on this with the CAS tool, the REDE tool, and I'll open that. The next thing I should say, and I don't know if Glenn mentioned this, let me see which one this is. This REDE tool that I'm going to pop up now, this is how it's looked for about a year. It's called version 5.4, and it works, and that's what I've got showing in my documents, but there were some limitations to it, and so there's a new version of it that Glenn is about ready to send out that's called version 6, and it looks a little different. And so I'm kind of debating. I think I'll show you on version 5.4, but if you know Glenn has this one released, it'll look a little different, but the idea will be the same, and so even though the interface will change, I think you'll still be okay with it if we work through the current one, the released one. So let me do that. We'll look at the this REDE tool here. Glenn will have to work with you a little bit. You know, you download this thing, and then there's a key, a license key that you have to get on your computer, and once it's there, once it opens up, it'll look like this. And what you'll do when you start with this thing is on this top line, the Validix input file, you'll go over here to the right where it says browse and load, and so that's where we'll start from. We'll load the file that we're going to work on. So Yeah, so let's say that, you know, the one I just downloaded from Volytics, I saved here to this folder, and now I'm going to open it. And we'll let the screen paint here. And so once you've done that, you'll see up here on the top line, it'll say 8,781 records or whatever it is. So that's the number of properties that are in your zone that you've downloaded. And what we're going to do is use these tools over here on the left to search for and to modify data, and we'll save it. And we'll save it into a file that we'll call modified or whatever. And then once we've saved all the changes we're going to make to this thing, we'll upload that back into Volytics. And so let me just pop back over to my my PDF file here and just kind of use this as we walk through it. Step 1 we talked about how finely to slice your market. Step 2 here is about downloading the XML file, and step 3 starting the REDE tool. And so step 4 is loading it, and step 5 is giving all the properties a market name. So let's do this. This will just kind of show you how the tool works and how we can use it to modify any of the fields. When I started here, it said 8,781 records, and if I use this part of the tool to do any filtering, I can reduce that down. And here where it says 8,781 filtered rows, you'll want to keep an eye on that just to make sure you're working on the number of properties you think you're working on. So the first thing you'll want to do, if you didn't use the GIS tool to create a market name, is to give all the properties a market name. And so over here on the right where it says editing, that's where we'll make the changes. And so what Glenn had recommended as a standard is you just put your state and the zone number, and then the market name. There, I don't want to make too big a deal of this, but there's still a few little bugs and stuff in Volytics, and it turned out if you created a market name that was generic and it turned out somebody else anywhere else in the country had used it, your properties could actually get mixed up, and you could end up looking at theirs and they looking at yours. So, if it's Sunny Acres and there's a Sunny Acres in Florida, you might ended up with their properties being displayed. So if you do it this way, just to make it unique, the state and the zone number, then after that you can put in anything you want. And in this case, I'm going to put in just the main zone. If you had used the mapping tool, the GIS tool, this would already be populated, and so you wouldn't have to change it. If you decide you're going to carve out the golf course communities, and you can find it by census tract or census block or subdivision or some other way down here, then you could also use this tool to go in and change the market name for for a subset of properties. But to start with, in this example, it's a homogeneous zone. We're going to say we're going to give them all the same market name. So I've typed it in here. It makes you say yes, you really want to do the editing by clicking this checkbox, and then it lights up this button here that says apply editing. So it'll be the same process whatever change you make. You'll do it up here in the editing area, and then when you're ready you'll click apply editing. The way this version of the tool works is, it'll prompt you here, say, are you sure you want to change it? And you say yes. And the very first time, until you create a new output file, it'll keep warning you. So I recommend the first change you make, you just go ahead and create a new output file name. And so once you do that, every other change you make will be saved automatically. So I'm going to say OK, and it'll bring me up here, and let's see, what did I call that? I'll just navigate here to where I'm going to save it, training XML file, and then I'll give it a name like California Zone 630. And it doesn't matter really what you call it, just so you can keep track of it, because you're just going to want to navigate to it and upload it back into Volytics after we're done with this. So now I clicked Save, and down here on the bottom, this results file. Okay, that's the path and the name of this file I created, and so that'll be the one after we've made all the changes we want to make that we'll upload back into Volytics. So let me just pop on over here and go to the next step I've got set up. Step 6 here
Actually,
is.
Matt, can I ask you a
Yeah,
question?
go ahead.
So if we're using this REDE tool to make the market groups, we need to locate the different different units in what we want to be defined as our market by either county code, well, not county code, but like census tract or subdivision. Is that correct? So we kind of have to individually look for them. Or if we use the GIS tool, we can just draw a little outline around it, and it automatically selects those ones. Is that correct?
It's correct, but let me step back and say, what we're doing here is rough scoring the entire zone, and when we put it back into Volytics, Volytics is going to divide it into market groups, and so you don't have to worry at this point. Let's say the first time you're working on the zone about drilling down on census tracts or subdivisions quite yet.
So we don't need to have it broken down into markets yet.
Let me be as precise as I can here when I answer that. Think of a market. So you've got one market. Wait a minute. You've got one zone that could be divided into 2 or 3 markets based on geography, and then Volytics will take those 2 or 3 markets, or maybe it's just one market for the entire zone, and slice it into, say, a dozen market groups. Based
Correct.
on size, style, and type.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be enough for you. But if
so up here in the top right corner,
Yep.
where you put the market name,
right,
you just, on this one, you just said, your example was, the whole zone is just all the same kind of housing, so we're just going to call it one type of market. Is that correct? Is that
Correct.
why you did that?
Yep.
Okay. So if we were coming on here with our very first time looking at our zone, and we wanted to break it up into 3 different markets, we would have to go through and, using this REDE tool, find the different homes that are going to be in each of our market and sort through them either by subdivision or whatever way we can sort through on this. Is that correct?
The better, if you could use the GIS tool, if you could use the map tool,
That's better.
that would be better, because that's going to be able to,
Okay.
in a situation where it really is geographic, that'll be able to do it quickest. And
Okay.
so the GIS tool has this very important limitation. It will only change the market name for properties that do not have a current market name. Meaning, if I put California 630 Maine on all these properties and then I go back and draw with the GIS tool, no properties will get the new names that I create based on the geography. So the GIS tool in particular, I'd say, is use it once at the beginning of the process, and then don't rely on it anymore. If you want to, if you want to do some slicing by geography, use that, and then you can come in here and all the properties, or the properties at least that you drew a shape over, those will already have a market name. And if there were some that you didn't, or some that you want to override, like you want to go in and carve out the condos, then you can do it using the REDE tool and this piece up here that we just did.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's important also about making that decision up front, and if you're going to do some market naming with the GIS tool, to do that first thing.
Okay.
Okay. So there we are. So we put in this market name value into 8,781 property records. And now I'm going to pop back over here. And we saved it. So that was step 6. Okay. So now step 7, Validix gives you these 7 rating fields: basement condition, extras, location, parking, site size, and view. And for Validix to work, it's got to have a number between 1 and 10 in there, and right now everything has a 0. And so the REDE tool is very good at quickly rough scoring, at putting in a value for these fields, and so that's what we'll look at next. Out here we don't have basements much at all, and so we were going to go through and just put everything as the same value. And so that's kind of where we're going to start for all these. Just set them at a value. Here I said, at least in our scheme out here, since things don't have a basement, we put it at a 1. With extras, we're going to kind of go up from nothing, and so we'll put those at a 1. And if we find out they've got a swimming pool or some extras, we can bump that up. The other ones, condition, location, parking, site size, view, we decided to start at 5 and then go up or down from there. The thing I'm saying here in italics is important too, and you were talking about being consistent between neighboring property owners and that kind of thing and how we score it. And here's a case where that would probably come into play. It doesn't matter so much what number you start with, whether it's a 1 or a 5. It's really the difference. So when you step up or down from that number, that difference between one property and another is what's going to change the predicted value. And so both deciding how much difference is it going to take to move the condition from a 5 to a 6, and then also deciding what's the dollar value of that 1 point are important. They can be relative, but it'd be nice if they were all the same for everybody. And since it's a father and son deal, you guys can make sure it's all the same for all your properties, so that if one of you is working in another zone or that kind of thing, you'll know what each of those mean. But I was just kind of laying that out up front as you go into it.
And now I have another question.
Yep.
Go ahead, Deb.
And these are always linear, right? Whatever value we put, say $5,000 difference between the numbers, it's the same for all of them. We can't say 1 to 2 couldn't be 10,000, 7,500 to go from 2 to 3. Just a couple thousand to go from 4 to 5, but then get high on the other end.
Correct.
It's got to be linear. It's the same amount for each one. Okay.
Correct. It's linear in terms of you'll put in the whole view rating is worth, in my example here, $100,000, and so each point is going to be worth 10,000. Now, if you don't want it to be linear, you do that in your scoring scheme. And so, if you want to make something worth $40,000, then you just bump it up, to a 9 from your 5, for example. So you'll want to think about your market, how you're making adjustments today, and make sure that you have enough dollars to work with kind of from the high to the low for a particular characteristic.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, now I have a question.
Yep.
So these ratings, should we make them, are they based on each market, or should they be all the same, have the same rating scheme for the entire zone?
Excellent question, and it's the former. So, you'll just have 1 to 10 to work with, but on the view, a 1 to 10 maybe down in some low-end tract homes may only be worth $5,000 or $2,000 per point, but up in the mountains where you've got a valley view or something, they may be worth 10 times that much. And so Volytics will allow you to do that. So let me just hop over and show you how that would look here. So hang on a second. In this market, say my condos, townhouses here, I'll click on this. Okay, so you can see over here on the left. So for this particular market, I can make view worth $100,000, but for the next one, I can make it worth $1 million. So yeah, exactly. And same way, the other key one, of course, is what's your adjustment factor per square foot of gross living area. So for condos out here, I'm doing $60, but I might do $100 for single families, and $200 or $300 for some high-end areas. So those are the other things you can adjust, so it's specific to that market group. So yep.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. So we're on this version. Oops, not that thing. That's my son's. Here we go. Okay. Yeah. So for these 7 ratings, the way I wrote up my little training scheme, even though we'll go back and I'll show you how we can do some fine-tuning, particularly on site size and condition, I'm saying let's just go through and set everything to a value to get started with. So let's say we're going to start with basements and set everything to a 1. Right now I'm not going to differentiate. I'm going to say every property, I'm not try to filter out condos versus single families. I'm going to go over here and on this drop down put the basement rating to a 1. Before I do that, just to show you down here in this kind of results table, this is where you can just kind of do a sanity check on what's going on, and going across here it shows you all the fields that it's pulled down, and so I'm going to use this. It's kind of like Excel, just drag it across here till I get to basement rating. So you can see in this column here, my system's saying network difficulties. Can you guys still hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Okay, all right.
I did too. Well, we're on the phone, so hearing you fine.
Okay, all right. So you can see in this column, basement ratings are all zeros right now. And so I'm going to turn on editing. We've got all 8,000 properties selected and hit apply editing. And it asked me, am I sure? Yes, I am. So now it went through and it changed the basement rating to a 1. And that's what I wanted. And since I had already created this results file or output file, it just updated it. So it wrote this change into the output file. So that reminds me to talk about undo. There's no undo capability in this version. The newer version does let you undo. But if somehow you messed it up and overwrote all your scoring accidentally, you just have to abandon ship and start over. And so it's on your desktop and it hasn't been downloaded into Volytics. So, you can. There is some limited disaster recovery, but you'll probably just want to double check things before you hit the apply editing, especially as you go down and start filtering on things. So there I did basement ratings. This list is alphabetical. For some reason, the results table isn't, although that's another enhancement that's coming. But here's extras rating. I've already got the value of 1 in here. I'll click this one and hit apply editing, and that's good. Okay, so all those are changed. Now I'm going to go through and set all the others to 5s here to start with, because we don't know any better, and we'll fine-tune it from here. But there's condition. I'm just going down looking for the word rating here, location, apply editing.
Question, Matt.
Yep.
It's actually a two-part question. The first one is, we're talking about we're going from 1 to 9 then on the scoring then, right?
Yep.
And so if we say that the range is, let's say, $50,000.
Yep.
Each tenth or each digit it's worth would be $5,000.
Right.
Okay. Why? Two areas come to mind here: is basements and garages. So if we can't leave a 0 in there, say that has no basement, I see you're putting a 1 in there. So if we're using $5,000 and $50,000 for the full range, we're giving it $5,000, even though it doesn't have a basement in it at all. So we just can't use zeros, though, if it denotes they have no basement or they have no garages.
Good question, and it's good to clarify this concept at this point before you go into score. If I put a 9 in there, it wouldn't give them $4,500. It's the difference between all the other properties in the market group that is scored. So if everything is a 1 or everything is a 5 or everything is a 9 or a 10, there won't be any incremental value added or subtracted. So that 100,000 or 50,000 only is used for the difference. So, if you start at 5, then you can count up by 5 steps or down by 5 steps from the midpoint. But if everything's at the midpoint, it doesn't do anything in terms of assigning them each $50,000. Does that make sense?
It does there. So we just got to make sure that we do two things when we're looking at it, it sounds like. One is wherever we decide the midpoint may not be a 5. Let's say you talked about a garage, or a basement sounds better.
Yep.
A basement, 1 meaning there is no basement. If having a standard, whatever we're going to call a standard basement is worth, and we don't break it down by finished and unfinished, so we'll have to figure something out. But whatever the standard mid-range basement is, and say it's worth, X number of dollars, and the most high-end one in this market is worth something else. Let's just say there's your $50,000. No basement is worth nothing. A top of the line, everything added is worth $50,000. Then we get the $50,000. It's worth $5,000 per spec mark. But then we would go through and decide where that average basement, maybe it's unfinished, or only a partial basement. Maybe it's a 3 is where the more normal is, and that's what we go from. But then we can still make sure that if we're at a 3, then it should mean that there's a $15,000 difference between having a normal basement and having no basement.
Yeah,
Does that make
exactly.
Sense?
Yep.
Okay, I'm with you. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So here we are at step 7. The other required fields for Validix to work and predict the values are style and type. And let me talk a little bit about that.
Actually, Matt, before you move on,
Yep.
Can I ask you one quick
Sure.
question? So going back to the scoring, let's say that each rating is $5,000 apart.
Yep.
Okay. So if you have something that's being scored as a 1 and something that's being scored as a 3, is that a $15,000 adjustment or only a $10,000 adjustment? 5,000
10.
moving up to 2,
Yeah.
and then
It's 10.
It would only be a $10,000 adjustment. Okay.
So, yeah,
so it's the difference times how much the increment is worth.
Right, right. So
Okay.
So that's a little bit of a glitch in the logic when Brad Stinson designed this thing, and you can see it here on this. This is a little excerpt from what we used here. So if 5 is the typical lot size for the market, as you said, you really only have 4 steps down, 1, 2, 3, 4, but you have 5 steps up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeah, it's a little funny that way, but you're right. That's exactly it. Logically, you can only, if you start at 5, you can subtract 4, or you can add 5 points to it. So again, as you're coming up with or finalizing your scoring scheme, you'll want to factor that in, just like you were talking about with the basements. What are they worth, and make sure I've got enough dollars in my scheme here to be able to make the adjustments I want to. Okay. So now this is the fairly straightforward part of using the REDE tool. So now let me talk about style and type. Some places the assessor data will give you this, and some places it won't. Style, as you can see over here, this changed from a free-form text field to, if the schema, if the database says there's only these 8 or whatever number of values that can be in the style, then it displays these here. And so let me ask you guys, do you know with your assessor, do they have this level of detail where it would say whether it's a 1-story or a 2-story? Typically you'll be able to tell mobile home, but
to a point, they use their own scoring. They have numerical scoring to tell what kind of homes they are.
Right.
Like a condo townhouse might be a 110.
Yep.
A single-family residence might be a 130. And so, we can go through and make those changes on our own there.
Yep.
But, one of the things I was looking at when you're talking about the zones before, when you're saying, I could see us breaking out single-family homes, condos, and manufactured homes. And so it looks like you're going to be able to do that here, so we don't have to do that based upon our market breakdown.
Right, right. Yep. So if there is a well-defined pattern in your assessor data or in the assessor data that FAIRS has, the Zayo people can work with you to do that automatically when they load the 2580 data. As I was saying, we didn't have that here, but it's not too big a deal if it's someplace here in this XML data, and like you were saying, it may be in a comment that's captured, and so you can work with it. Just to go back over here, if I want to see all the like this, let me see if extras comments has anything that gives us any value here. Yeah, so if you see what I just did here, I pulled down extras comment, and you can see that FAIRS concatenates a bunch of stuff. So Y1 might mean yes, 1-car garage, no pool or spa. 2,157 properties have that in the extras comment. And so these are the things you might be able to work with to, fill in the style and type, or to fine-tune your scoring. So anyway, style and type have to be populated, and it's going to be very much county by county or jurisdiction by jurisdiction specific, depending on what you've got. Like I said, for us out here, it didn't matter too much, and so for style, we just started out and put everything as 1-story. You could put it as unique if you wanted, and then I'll just put this in. The other one.
Can we create our own style?
No.
You've got a unique.
Nope. We're limited to what they've predefined for us.
Okay.
Okay. Type here. that you can see this long list. There's a bunch of them up here that start with a C, which stands for commercial property. Well, we're really not into that market with this tool, so that's kind of silly to have, but it's there. So you'll want to take, I think I use C other. You'll want to take one of these and just throw everything that's not single family into it for now. At some point in the future, if you wanted to, we could go in and tease these things out. But what is going to be